Eugene, I need to ask you a question.
Sounds serious. What is it? Go ahead.
Would you rather train for and run a road mile, like hard out, full noise road mile, or run 100 miles?
Oh, that is, I'm torn. Give me more information.
What if you could do both?
Have you been at the hand sanitizer again, Matt, in the hospital?
Not since New Year's, but besides, I'm talking about the Spectacle. It's first of its kind running festival taking place in Nelson between Friday the 13th and Sunday the 15th of December 2024. Nelson, it's the South Island's hat. It's delicious. It's such a beautiful place, and it has some of the best trail running in the hemisphere, and it's just, generally beautiful.
It is stunning. Whakatū.
The Spectacle is a spectacle. It's got both road and trail events and a festival vibe from 10k to 100 mile on the trails, and a bunch of road events from community miles, 5ks to an elite road mile that the organisers are going to be bringing people who we usually watch on our screens to the streets.
Thespectacle.co.nz for details and get training.
And they're off. Here we go.
Welcome to the Dirt Church Radio Aid Station, episode number 13. I'm Matt Raymond.
And I am Eugene Bingham. Tēnā koutou katoa. No mai, haere mai. And this week, we have a couple of very special guests too. Our mates Ali Pottinger and Kerry Suter from SQUADRUN. Kia ora kōrua.
What is up, aid stationers? What is good? I hope you're out on a run right now, enjoying some trail time, maybe a sneaky lap around the block, or maybe even sitting in your car or listening to us in prison. Do what you got to do.
I don't know what our prison population stats would be.
Not high, probably. But if you are going to go on a prison break, this would be a good, podcast to listen to. You know, you got to run from the law. Want to run far?
My wife was working with a gentleman who was incarcerated, and he was working up to do like a marathon inside of the walls of one of the correctional facility with which he was incarcerated in, and it was all going swimmingly until my dear Rebecca had the naive idea to bring in one of my old GPS watches, and they were like, no, you cannot. You cannot put this man on a heat map and broadcast the GPS location of where he will be running. I don't think he was he was hardly Pablo Escobar.
It goes something like further, faster, there in Christchurch. Rocky is hairy and so is Badger. Jules is nice and Jacob is delicious. Go further, faster now.
Oh, further, faster, there in Christchurch. Rocky is hairy and so is Badger. Jules is nice and Jacob is delicious.
Go further, faster now.
Dirt Church Radio. Hoi anō, moving on. How are you two both? This is the first time we've ever started a podcast with two other people in the room. So how are you?
Ali, how are you?
I'm okay. I had a good run today. We've been pretty under the pump lately, I guess. Kerry, we went down to Carterton last weekend for Kerry to check out the vehicle modifiers. So we've had quite a big trip, and just kind of spent the week catching up again. Yeah.
And that looked like quite a promising trip.
Warning everybody, I may be back on the road soon and loosely in control of a van. So if you see a Volkswagen hurtling towards you, my hands are not gripping the steering wheel, and I have limited. It seemed to be the ceiling for me was the ability to brake, which is the problem really, because it seems I can accelerate just fine, but the braking was a problem. So I don't know. You've all been warned.
I'd ask for machine guns. That would be my number one.
Yeah, machine guns.
Modification.
Yeah. Once upon a time I would have suffered from road rage, but I'm much more mellow about many things since my accident. So I suspect I'm not going to flip out at people on the roads because, well, firstly, it's hard for me to pull a finger. So
maybe a giant finger. Bling, that.
Yeah, I was also testing the upper limits of the human bladder capacity the other day. I won't go into details, but I managed 1.7 litres before blood came out. So that seems to be the male bladder. Interestingly, holds about 700 mils as a maximum, and the female bladder about 500 mils. So I don't know. I was going for a record or something, but that wasn't a particularly fun day that I won't go into the details of. But 1.7 liters.
You went into quite a lot of details.
Yeah, that is quite a lot of details. Yeah.
I thought you said 7 liters, and I was
1.7 liters. 7 liters with that. It's that'd be terminal. Yeah. Yeah. So good and bad with me, but moving on.
Hey, you guys have got a bit of a special deal running too for DCR listeners.
Yeah, we do. So we have got a trial available, 4-week trial that listeners can click on your website. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And give us a whirl to slide into our DMs.
This is all over the place. So if we were going to wrap it up succinctly, there'll be no sliding into anyone's DMs. Thank you very much. They'll be clicking on the links. And
Okay.
that you guys, unless that's what you want to get into, and then far be it from us to stand and
That's the extra deal.
That's SQUADRUN Extra Black.
Yeah.
No, definitely not OnlyFans.
OnlyFans.
Not OnlyFansing. I've heard what happens on there, and that is not for
Eugene
me.
and I actually have an OnlyFans, and people pay us to keep our clothes on.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. It's quite the revenue stream. But you're sponsoring the greatest run ever portion of our podcast, which has been, since day dot, and I would say far and away one of the most popular portions. In fact, if not the most popular portion of the podcast. And we're stoked that you guys are partnered with us. Good coaching leads to greatest runs ever. And there is a 4-week trial program that you can do through clicking on the link. It's a Dirt Church Radio /SQUADRUN link. And so amazing.
Yeah, give back to the community, help people out. We started SQUADRUN so we could help as many people as possible, and anything that gives us a platform or the opportunity to help people. I don't think that good information should be expensive, and I don't think that our sport should be, overcomplicated, and we should be not building moats and walls, but we should be encouraging others in. So if you see that in an email from the DCR newsletter, then click on it. Come join us. Join the rebellion.
The rebellion. Look, we've got a couple of things to get through today. Exciting. But first, we've got an announcement about the fiery stair climb on the Furber Steps in the Blue Mountains in August. Ali, you will be subbing in for Mr. Bingham and joining me on the 30th and 31st of August. How excited are you?
Oh, I'm super excited. I'm sad that Euge isn't coming because I enjoy my time with you, Eugene. I'm looking forward to some more time with Matt, though, as always. And I've been chatting with Gavin about it. He is super enthusiastic and passionate and pumped, and it just makes me get really excited too. Like, I'm super looking forward to being back in the Blue Mountains and seeing people tackling Furber stairs as many times as they would like. It can be once or it can be for 24 hours. How many are you going to do, Matt?
Well, I don't have a clue. I had that thing around how I impulsively said that I would do 24 hours if someone donated $10,000, and then just had nightmares. The whole night, I had nightmares. I told you the nightmare, Eugene. It was Conrad Langridge and me sliding down an ice sheet. I did.
You told the podcast this. We got a message from Conrad going, "What?
Don't bring me into this, you freak!" But I had nightmares, and then rang Gavin the next day and said, "Look, I'm backing out of this." And in the nick of time, because someone was about to come through with a $10,000 donation. So I'm looking forward to doing a live podcast with you at Scenic World. Motor neuron disease is pernicious, it's fatal, and it's something that is a blight, and I'm really looking forward to engaging. They've got some subject matter experts. There's all sorts of stuff I think that I don't think we know what we're really letting ourselves in for. There's all sorts of stuff that Gavin's got planned. He's certainly, as you said, he's passionate. He's a big ideas guy. So if you want to go to, if you search Fiery's Climb for MND, Mike November Delta, motor neuron disease, on the internet, there's a Facebook page. go there, look it up. Further Stairs, he's trying to get as many people from Aotearoa, New Zealand over as possible, and it's going to be a good time. What about you, Ali? Have you got a goal?
I don't have a goal because I've actually got a race a few weeks after that. So I thought I'll definitely try and get up and down them a few times at least. Maybe kind of throughout the 24 hours and see if I can cheer some of those people on that are doing the big ones. And of course, people doing the shorter ones and the kids race, the kids climb, which I'm looking forward to. So yeah, no specific target, but definitely plan on being up and down Furbo a few times. And it's actually so beautiful, like all the lookouts there and that sort of thing. Like I do get really excited about climbing Furbo Stairs because it's stunning. Like there's so many spots that you just look at and you're like, oh my goodness, that's unreal. The scope of the waterfalls and the valleys and the sounds of the birds and also probably a bit of grunting from people and some swears.
Yeah, it's an ideal way to bugger yourself up, really, isn't it? And ruin any perspective of a good performance the next 3 months afterwards. So, yeah, I'm the same as you. I'm like, what do I? Yeah, but very, very excited. Right, getting that out of the way.
Yeah, and if you are going to take it on, I recommend having a listen to our last chat with these two because they both dished out some excellent advice about how to climb stairs and how not to climb stairs to save your calves. So go and have a listen to that, I reckon, for some top advice, and so you don't come away without blowing up calves or wrecked feet and things. But yeah, look, we are a week or so after the Western States endurance run, and Matt, you had the great idea of asking Dan Jones to send us a bit of a inside word about his race after his fourth place. So I reckon we should play that.
Hey guys, thanks for inviting me to give a bit of a debrief on my Western States performance. First, I'd just love to give a big shout out to all the listeners and all those supporters that have reached out. The response has been truly overwhelming, and I've just managed to slowly start catching up on messages, and yeah, it's unreal. It just shows that, the kind of support and the passion that people have for trail running, and it makes me really proud to represent New Zealand and represent all those other trail runners out there over here in the States and abroad. So cheers. It's it's cool as. So yeah, moving on to my performance. Western States started as usual. The run up at Escarpment felt fairly relaxed, and we had a massive group of runners out there. Katie Scheid was pretty much with us in the front group. She had an outstanding day. She's an absolute weapon, and just so cool to see what she's doing. It's hard to say the performance of Courtney last year was just unreal, and then Katie and many others are starting to follow up, and they're really mixing up the other guys. But yeah, for us, we managed to slowly pull away, I guess, after the escarpment on some of the single track, the more technical trails towards Robinson Flat. And we had a big group of us, about 17, I think was about our max in the group. And yeah, it slowly started breaking apart a bit towards Robinson Flat, which is about the 50k mark. Hayden and I were working really well together when we managed to pull away. We had Jim up ahead of us, and then leaving Robinson Flat, we were actually right behind them, and we were talking to each other, just like geeing each other up a bit, like, oh, this could be, this is our day. If we work together here, we could really have a really strong performance, and there's a potential for a win here. And I felt like the legs actually didn't feel great to start with, but they just started feeling better and better. And yeah, I was actually feeling really positive about where I was at and the performance I was putting in. So after that, made our way on the kind of smooth four drive tracks before the canyons, just slowly just ticking away. Jim was holding his ground really, but then we managed to catch him at the aid stations. Our aid stations seemed to be pretty efficient, and Jim was, probably being sensible and cooling down and just taking his time. We were as well, but we seemed to be making up the ground that he would slowly get on the runnable stuff. And going through the canyons, it's always a massive hard one, a massive it's a massive tough piece of race for me where I'm just like, I remember it from last year and I certainly remember it this year. It was just hard. Like I was doing all the protocoling, right? Filling it with ice, my ice bandana at the aid stations, trying to keep cool, trying to keep on top of my nutrition. But yeah, again, I just really felt the legs almost falling out from beneath me as I was making my way up to Michigan Bluff, the 90-kilometer mark. But managed to hold it together, and it's just awesome seeing your support crew in these races. It's, you need it for the physical side of things, for the cooling, but mentally knowing that they're the next people you're going to see and, they can help you get underway again. It is really special. And I had a great support crew there. I had the T-Rex crew, Precision, Hydration crew, Michelle, of course, and then Mael, who was pacing me, and Eli Hemming, who was also pacing me. And I picked those guys up I picked Eli up at Forest Hill, the 100K mark, and that's where I was in about 4th or 5th, I think. Dakota just pulled away. Hayden had caught up to me, and I didn't actually know it at that point. But yeah, I was actually getting caught again. I can't actually remember who it was, but anyway, I picked that Eli and we just got underway. I tried to make the most of those fast runnable trails all the way back to the finish line. And I thought the way I was moving, I felt like I should be picking people up. I was not mucking around, putting everything into it to try and pick up places, try and pick up Hayden or maybe Rod or Jim, who, Jim ended up winning obviously and pulling away from Rod. But I thought there might be more blow-ups. But in the end, everyone was just on their game. And that's just the beauty of, trail racing. It is becoming even more professional. The elites seem to be stepping up. The times are absolutely insane throughout the whole top 10 for guys and girls, and just very close racing. So you can't take anything for granted. You can't make mistakes out there. And there weren't too many to be made. So I was happy enough. I was really happy with my improvements. Obviously, 4th place is a bit of a hard one. You're one step off the podium, but it is what it is. And I've got to be, I am stoked with how I've improved, how I put together a strong race. I'll leave it there. I know that's about 5 minutes. So, everyone that's, followed along, there were some late nights out there, I know, following the live tracking and everything. Absolutely awesome. I cannot wait to catch up with the trail community when I'm back in New Zealand, or don't hesitate to reach out if you're traveling as well. Got UTMB up next, and we'll be in for it again. Cheers.
Experience proactive health and exercise benefits with Currans. Original New Zealand blackcurrant extract supplement capsules. We've been on these little purple beauties for the longest times. We really think that they help and they make us feel good. Go to www.currans.co.nz to read up about the science around these magical little purple pills and reject big blackcurrant.
Big blackcurrant is coming for us, I think, after that.
The blackcurrant industrial complex can jump in the lake. Currants.
But luckily we've got currants.co.nz.
Kerry, Ali, I know that you guys weren't around per se for Western States, but what are your thoughts on it feels like, we were talking about F1 before, it feels like these elite races are really getting into that space, especially at states where their transitions, their crewing is like an F1 pit crew. Thoughts?
Interesting. You should bring up Formula One. So, what we see with competitive sports, and just like Formula One, is they bring out a set of regulations, some rules to play by, and the racing. And initially, one team or one driver's kind of got it worked out, and then after a certain period of time, you end up with this convergence where you've got, a lot more of the teams are up at that level, and a lot more of the drivers are at that level, and the professionalism has comes a long way. If you look back at even Western States is a good example. Women's marathon's another good example. Men's marathon's a good example. You'd only need to go back to about 1965, and the world record for the women's marathon was 3 hours and 30 minutes. And it doesn't take long before it gets to 3:20, and then not long it's 3:10, and then soon it's bust through 3 hours. But you get this, decaying curve, this sort of like hockey stick effect on a graph, where initially things will fall quite quickly, and they did. If you look at Ann Trayson's times at Western States, she won Western States about 3,000 times. But like you talk about a generational talent, we think the same way when we talk about Courtney or Jim. But Anne was running 18 or 19 hours to win that pretty consistently for the more than a decade. And here we are now with some nearly 5 hours knocked off that, 4 or 5 hours knocked off that. The improvement's incredible, but we'll see the big chunks will come away. If you think about when you started your running journey, your 5K was probably initially something like 30 minutes or 28 minutes, and then you trained a bunch and you took it down 5 minutes. You trained a bunch, you took it down 2 minutes. You trained a bunch more, you only took it down 1 minute. At some point you put the axe down and you start taking the file out and you start shaving off little bits and refining just the edges. And so too will we see Western States. We'll think that no one could run as fast as Jim and Courtney, but they will. And within the next decade, we'll see those times get beaten by people we probably haven't even heard of yet. And we'll wonder, is this the new Lewis Hamilton, or is this the Fangio? Is this the Ayrton Senna? Those times will continue to improve. But I think what we'll see is the interesting thing that will happen is you'll see more people running those 15-hour times, those 16-hour times, whereas previously it was one. When Jim set the record, it was daylight, and now he runs pretty much the record time again, and there's 4 or 5 guys just down the road behind him, and that's. Dan's right. He's right and he's wrong. It's to be expected, to be honest. And he's in the mix. He's a great. If only Dan had gone to Western States 5 or 6 years ago, he would have won the thing. It would have been easy to do. And what is he going to have to do to win it now? And put the clock forward 5 years? I don't know if he's ever going to be able to do it. There's going to be so many guys and girls that'll be just running incredibly competitive times, and that's just what I would expect. The other thing you'll see with Western States is a big pendulum swing with conditions. You only need the temperatures to be 1 or 2 degrees hotter, or to have 2 or 3 inches more snow over the tops, and you greatly impede the ability for athletes to perform at the absolute optimal level, particularly when nutrition and hydration play such a major role, and those environmental factors really limit people's ability to absorb, nutrition at an optimal rate and run at an optimal rate.
Ali, the other thing that Dan talked about was how he tried to put the foot down at the end, hoping that people would blow up. And he was saying, that it's just not happening anymore. People aren't blowing up. They're not coming backwards. I mean, we're seeing that more and more people are getting more consistency and being able to sustain the fast paces that they're running. Are there any particular things that are going on, do you think, or reasons that we're seeing that kind of the improved speed being able to be sustained and deep into races?
It's a good question. I mean, they're professionals now. They are professional athletes. So before, we saw it with back in the days of the All Blacks, they'd be doing their full-time jobs and then they'd be All Blacks on the side, and the same thing is happening in trail running now. Beforehand, I'm sure probably Ann Trayson wasn't a social media influencer or a coach or anything. She was probably doing a full-time job and just training when she could. But now these athletes are, they and the money's there now where it wasn't before. So there's the sponsorship, which is enabling people to have that extra layer, level of professionalism. So I mean, we saw you see a lot more paid athletes who can really dedicate time to their builds and treat it really seriously. We saw Dan had gone out to the States quite early this year. I'm sure Andrew McDowell would have loved to do the same, but he's got a job that doesn't involve being in the US for much longer than he can. So, like there's that side of things where they can just dedicate a lot more to it. And there's a lot more, information out there. There's different technology. I guess people can kind of dial into that racecraft a lot more than probably previously. And they kind of are encouraged to as well when you have the golden ticket races. So they've got to kind of show up and race and get things pretty fine-tuned, where before we didn't have that.
Dan's also mentioned that he's off to UTMB again. How do you reckon he'll go?
Yeah, it's a tough one to back up from Western States to UTMB. And he's, like we said just now, he's had a really dedicated build to that. I think that with UTMB, you really need to pick your target and go there for months beforehand. We've seen how successful that was for Jim. And we know Ruth's been doing it. Like Martin and I had a good chat about Ruth and UTMB at Tarawera this year. So I know that for this year and next year, UTMB is her A race times 2. So she's and I was amazed by the depth of data analysis and predictions and that sort of stuff that goes into it. So like Martin had said, like Ruth was only kind of predicted to be like within a minute of Courtney if she had raced this previous year, which would have been the ultimate to watch, right? Like how good would that have been to see? So I think that Ruth will win UTMB in this year or next year. Like that's her focus. We know how seriously she takes these things, and she's in there, like she's going to be there doing it. So I think that whilst Dan's an incredible athlete and he'll do well, he won't do as well as he could have if it was his sole focus. So if he made it his next year goal, then I'm sure we'll see him perform far better than he could. So that's kind of my take on it. Obviously, like there's not going to be any way to judge that measure. And I totally wish him well. Like it's so great to see Kiwi athletes out there smashing it on the world stage, showing them, here we are from little old Aotearoa and throwing down with the best of them. Yeah, so that's kind of my take. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Hey, quick question for you. Are you someone who wants to be fit, healthy, and happy? And what if I told you could get your dream body by simply just listening to a podcast? I'm Josh.
And I'm KG, and we're the hosts of the Fit, Healthy, and Happy podcast.
Listen, we get it. Fitness isn't easy. Carbs, no carbs.
Just stop, okay? It doesn't have to be that complicated. And that's why we made this podcast. We get straight to the facts so you can become your best you.
So the way to check us out is click the link in the show notes or search Fit, Healthy, and Happy podcast on any of the major podcast platforms. We'll see you soon.
He did well last year for, like you say, how he backed up from Western States again. But you're right, that's the thing, isn't it? It's going to be so exciting for us watching Ruth with that dedicated application that she has, and also fueled by having to pull out last year as well. That must have just stuck in her craw for 12 months now, and I don't know if I'd want to be in the way of a motivated, pissed off Ruth Croft. So, bring it on. Yeah. Look, we should move on to our main discussion point for the episode, which is usually Matt and I pose a question to each other and then sort of do a bit of a deep dive, but we're a bit lazy today because we've got 2 experts in the house who, we decided to put them to work. And so, Ali, you came up with a good idea about something to chat to Matt about and his approach to Tarawera 100 Miler. Do you want to take it away?
Yeah, so we thought we'd like to make it's something that people can play along with at home. So if they're on their run or wherever they're listening, they can kind of apply this to themselves as well. So whilst I'd love it to be all about you, Matt, I think we're going to try and make it a bit more open-ended if we can, but kind of like with you as the kind of guinea pig. So yeah, when we have a consult with an athlete, we'll kind of talk through these things. So talking about a race build, so going, first what do you have? And for me, like, you know, in Matt's case, we know he's an experienced athlete. He's got lots of ultra distances under his belt. He has lots of motivation and buy-in towards Tarawera. I'm sure it means a lot to him. And also like the whole, you know, like his mates have done it. So, you know, Matt's totally got it in him. What does he need? So this is kind of when we go, well, what do you think you need, Matt? Like, for your build between now and then, what needs work? What areas can kind of be improved upon?
Well, I think globally there's always room for improvement. So if I was looking at this, you know, engaging, I'd be talking about, well, I think globally things need, you know, like I need to be in the shape to run 100 miles. And currently I am in shape to run 100 miles, actually, based on the fact that, you know, we see a lot of people at Tarawera and other events who do that. But I don't just want to run 100 miles. I want to run 100 miles. I want to experience it, and I want to do as well as I can. So for me, there's a balance with that. I think, honestly, like if you give me a plan, I'll follow it, for good nor ill. I think something that Kerry said to me, and he said it to me on the start line or the start and finish line when we did Tarawera together last time that we did it together years ago. And it was early hours of the morning, and he said to me, you're better than you think you are. And what you need to do is actually sort of buy into that, and you need to back yourself, and you need to find that sort of mental strategies around how you get to that space. And I think if you were looking at coaching me in that regard, it's that aspect that I'll need the most, in that aspect that I'll need the most sort of engagement around, you know. The other thing I think for me is, and I've been thinking about it at the moment when I'm running, like I was out running today, Rebecca and I, we went out, we did something called a DCMF half. It's a gravel half marathon in Riverhead Forest, and I was thinking, like, sure, but I don't know what it's going to be like to run a whole day. You know, like, what's that going to feel like running for, 24 plus hours? And how do you, and that's the kind of stuff that I think I'd need help with, like planning out logistics, management, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so for those who are playing along at home, what we want you to really think about in the context of this Aid Station podcast is, where are you currently with regards to what you're bringing to the table for the event that you're working towards? So what experience do you have? What fitness do you have? Are you new to the sport? Do you have a lot of experience with the sport? Are you okay with the long run, but you struggle with your speed and strength? Are you poor on the hills, but you're okay on the flat? So looking at all of your strengths and weaknesses on where you're currently at with your training, and then thinking about the objective you're working towards. So in Matt's case, it is the Tarawera 100 miler, but this could be just as applicable to someone who's just got that Kepler entry, or they're looking at doing Old Ghost next year, or the Wild, or name your event in here. If you are out on a run right now, possibly it is a structured training run towards one of those events. So how are you going to build the bridge from where you currently are to where you want to be? And so, Matt, what success looks like for you at the Tarawera 100 miler will probably be, I want to have a good run of it. I want to stand on that start line going, like, given the amount of time I was able to commit to this, I'm happy with the person that I am today, and my job for the next 24 plus hours is to execute a good quality race and represent myself well and use my fitness well, and then stand on the finish line and reflect on that experience and go, I'm happy with what I achieved today. Probably you're not there going, oh, look, I want to top three this sucker and knock us out of the park. And here we, so understand what success looks like for you. Really have a good idea of that, and then work out how you're going to get there. The asterisks that we want to put to this as well is, we don't coach Matt. Matt has a coach. You're working with Adam's great, knows a lot of stuff, and we're not looking to change how you train today. So this, again, it's mostly focused on those people who want to work towards something, or are working towards something, and how they're going to get there.
But that's the thing, isn't it? It's a big, it's the elephant, isn't it? You bite at one. How do you eat an elephant? one bite at a time. And that's the thing, isn't it? When people go into this, it's all those questions that they have. And I have the benefit of, as I sit back and reflect on it, like not just sort of, I have done a bunch of ultras. I have been coached a lot in the past. Also, what I've had the experience of doing is hanging out with Eugene for the last 6 odd years, who's an incredible runner and, knows a lot of stuff. And talking to people such as yourself, talking to coaches, talking to athletes, talking to all sorts of people, I feel like I've soaked a lot of stuff in, but it's that on the day management. How do you begin to work that out? Like, how do you begin to kind of what's the first step, would you say, in breaking that down? If I came to you and said, look, I want to run a 100-mile race at Tarawera. I want the finishing time to have a 2 in it. It's probably not going to be 23 or 21. In fact, but I do want it to have a 2 in it. I don't want it to have a 3 in it, if at all. But I'm loosely focused on that. It's not my, rigid, but like, what would be the first thing that you'd say?
I think I'd say time can be a fickle measure. Like, I think kind of working out what your goals are, and I think too, especially with a race like that, where it can be so black and white. And you'd feel like I'm either on or I'm off. And actually, like, also if it's your first one, like, you're going into the unknown. So going like, actually, like, I'm going to have a process goal. I'm going to have a think about what I want to get out of myself this whole day, something that I can focus on, because it can still come good, right? Like, but if you feel like you're not on, then it makes it a lot tougher. So probably, especially for a first one, I'd say, like, it's great to have these kind of aspirations, but focus on the process first rather than focus on a time, because finishing 100 miles, regardless of the time, is a huge achievement. And I take my hat off to, not that I've got one on at the moment, but nobody can tell that.
You've just outed yourself.
To anybody that can finish 100 miles in one go, like, regardless of how long it takes, because those people that take the full 35, 59 have just shown such incredible endurance. So I can appreciate wanting it to be have a 2 in it, but I think kind of going like, what can I do to get the best out of myself for that time is probably the biggest priority. What do you think, Kerry?
I'm not, to be perfectly honest, outside of the competitive level, I don't really like time goals in ultra marathons, particularly for the bulk of the field, which is enthusiastic recreational runners at best. When you set a time goal, the next thing people do is they bring out the spreadsheet, and then the spreadsheet lists all kinds of problems, because they'll go, I want to be 50% distance at 50% time, and I don't know many people that are going to finish Tarawera Ultra and they're through 80 Ks at half of their race time. I suspect there will be nearly no one that crosses the finish line, let alone with a negative split. I think would be incredibly rare. And so they lead themselves to all sorts of problems and negative psychological problems on race day, because if you find yourself 5 minutes behind at an aid station, you're like, well, ho-hum, I'm starting to fall. 20 minutes at the next aid station, you're like, oh, I've lost this now, I'm in trouble. And next thing you know, you're hours behind. So it's only going to give you a negative stimulus. It's less likely to give you a positive stimulus of being ahead of time targets. So you're right. I'm okay with a window, Matt, that you say, look, I want to have a 2 in it, not a 3 in it. But we would sit down and really talk to the athlete about, what their experience level's like, and what sort of, how previous, they've probably done some 100K races if they're looking to run a 20 something hour 100 mile, and what those times were like. Tarawera is not a particularly difficult race in terms of complexity to train towards. So I guess there's the benefit in some regard that, Matt, you don't have to worry about, finding loads of time to be on mountains or picking up tons and tons of elevation with, we're well less than Western States is like 5,500 meters of elevation, and even that's considered a pretty flat and fast 100 miles, and Tarawera is even faster than that. So, I think I think you got to factor everything in when you're working towards a race like that. Knowing that you're going to be out there for 30 plus hours is a good starting point. But hopefully, Matt, I'd like to say there's going to be a 2 in it, but most probably you've given yourself enough runway to do it. We will do these consults with athletes that are relatively new to the sport, and they'll contact us in October about an ultra marathon.
Sorry,
they want to. Yeah, they have a 4-month lead in to do their first 100 miles, and sometimes we'll say,
and their long run is 10K.
Yeah.
What was that? Sorry.
And their long run is 10K.
It's funny, isn't it? We seem, and maybe we could talk about this too, in terms of the concept of what's needed from a coach and what athletes expect and what constitutes coaching. I think that's changed massively too, isn't it? Because if you look at, I feel like I was running the other day with a couple of lads, great dudes, started running in lockdown, have already done 100 miles, and are now thinking about, they're all about Cocodona. I'm like, what? That's not. It seems like the bar has been pushed up. It seems like 100 miles is considered, or it seems, maybe it's because it's dissemination of media or what have you, to be in some ways quite pedestrian. So do you notice that there's been a change in what athletes are seeking from you?
I think they see. I mean, we've seen it with Tarawera 100 miler. I think they just see a number on the computer and go, yeah, cool, I can do that. We've had a guy that had done the 21K and was like, oh, I'm going to do the miler next year. And we were like, it's not, it's not as easy, just multiplied by 8.
It's just 8 21K runs.
I mean, and people can do amazing things. I know people have done a 50K as their longest run and gone into the miler and done it. So, yeah, I think we do see people push the boat pretty fast, and it's kind of going, well, what do you want from this sport? Do you want to be doing this, for many years to come? What's the hurry? But it's also, running is whatever you want it to be. You can. I just did a post to our group recently saying, what excites you? Do you want to be just going away for a weekend with your girlfriends, or do you want to find the hardest, most sadistic thing you can do and sign up for that? Or do you want to go further? Do you want to go faster? Do you want to do multi-days? You want a destination race? What is it that appeals? Because that shapes your training. So I can understand both sides of it, but I'm always about engaging with things, safely and hopefully in a way that promotes health and, it lets you be happy and enjoy your training and enjoy your sport.
I think, Matt, we're also seeing a lot of, options available for people now. I think we opened the door after the marathon into this world that is almost limitless in opportunity and challenges. Whether you're talking about just an ultra marathon, just an ultra marathon that along mountains and hill and trail, or a backyard ultra which could go for 300 or 400 kilometers. There's so many different ways you can go in this sport now, or you can put the race number to the side and decide, and run the length of New Zealand, on Tarawera trails. You could do anything you want with your fitness. Coast to Cozy is another fine example of insanity that exists. But just because a lot of people are doing stuff like the 100 miler at Tarawera, a great example, again, there'll be 600 or 700 crazies that do that. That doesn't make it normal. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of people doing it, and it's hard for everyone. And it's just a lot of people doing hard stuff now. And that's the shape of our sport. And I'm great that there's so many mentally unwell people. No, so many people participating in it. It's it is great. But to get back to talking, you said coaching. There's a lot of people trying to do this with some sort of a program or a plan, and I don't know how you can. I mean, sure, give the downloaded marathon training program a crack, but hard to do the free, found it on the internet plan for specifically Matt's 100 mile, that's specifically Tarawera 100 mile. Like you've now got these really bespoke entry and exit points for the athlete themselves. So as a unique snowflake doing something that is very specific in how it needs to be executed, be it by terrain or environment or temperature. It could be anything. So I think we have to be a lot more detailed on how we're preparing humans for these hard things now, because they're very hard things. You are going to go for a run, and it's going to take your kids are going to get up and they're going to do a full day of something, and then they're going to end that, and then they're going to go to bed, and you're still running, and they're going to sleep through the night, and you're still running. They're going to get up the next day, and maybe you're finished. Probably not, but it's an insane thing to be doing for an incredibly long period of time.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I guess this is the thing, and if there was again, that sort of psychological shift and thinking about, for me, what that brings up is my kids have grown up with me doing that with work. So do you know, that's an interesting question that you said in terms of for me, what I would need, and I guess that would something like what I would need after an ultra marathon, or what I would need for an ultra marathon, that preparation for the miler in terms of that familial spend and that familial, the enculturation for me. If you said to me, hey Matt, you need to go to bed 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, I'd be like, okay, it's going to suck, but all right, we'll do it. It's not, I'm not someone, I've only just got my sleep pattern back, or I'd never had one. I've only just recently, I'd say in the last 6 months, established a really good, proper sleep pattern. So that's an interesting thing, isn't it? Is that something that people, not something that people, how do you work on that specifically? Going through the night. What's the first thing, or what's something that people underestimate or overestimate about that?
Yeah, I think with the through the night, it's when you've done it running, you're like, man, that was way harder than I expected it to be. Your circadian rhythm, you're at your lowest, and your tummy's not used to having any food then. So we do encourage, if you haven't done it before, a run the night away session where you might go out for your run at 12 and finish at 6 a.m. So that you've experienced that. Because when people don't do that before their race, and then that happens to them, that's a time when they're like, well, this sucks, I'm out, because I'm going slow, my tummy's not wanting to eat my, whatever. So it is good to have that experience. So we do give people a run the night away session, as that kind of, I guess, just an experience that they've got added to their kete. And the other thing that I like people to do is, with this, and it'd be great for you, Matt, is to write, and actually for any race, not just a 100-mile race, is to write your endurance CV, or, write your running CV, write down all the things that you've done with your running, and you'll go, oh, I'm the person that did that, and actually I was bloody unfit then, and I still managed to do that. Or actually that was really tough, and I did that. Or actually I've done a lot of events. I'm capable of doing this. And also, and that's not just events, that's adventures, that's all the things that you've done that kind of can help give you that confidence in yourself before your big event. And the other thing I like people to do with that as well is write their endurance CV. So, for me, I've flown from London to Gisborne, which was something like 38 or 43 hours door to door. It was horrendous, and I managed to get about 1 hour of sleep on the plane. Kerry and I, when we moved into our house, hired a moving truck, drove from Rotorua to Masterton, picked up all my gear, drove back, but there was a snowstorm, so we had to turn around, and we ended up going through Wanganui and through the through National Park, and the snow drifts, and sliding around in the truck, and that was 17 and a half hours, and giving birth now, that was a 4-day labour. So I just think, draw upon all those experiences. You're like, way rather be running than I would rather be doing that, because you will have some feats of endurance that you can go, yeah, okay, I've done that. I'm capable of doing this.
I think conditioning is a really important thing to take on board with your training, Matt, and understanding whether or not the training modality that you're working on is primarily a fitness modality or a conditioning modality, and so those run the night away sessions can often be conditioning if required. So you might get a lot of shift workers that work through the night and they actually know that they're fine at 2 or 3 in the morning and they're used to functioning at that time, in which case then we don't need to do the conditioning so much in that space. But if you might be fine with it, but people that haven't got a lot of experience in that regard would have to work on it. And, I don't remember Gisborne having an international airport, Ali, but
It didn't. I had to make a connection, Kerry.
Gisborne International Airport.
Gisborne International.
They'd love it. Oh, they need it. Don't forget Gisborne.
What would you say is the most, and looking at a bell curve of your athletes, when people are approaching this stuff, the most underrated thing that athletes consider, and that you as coaches, and there's different, and let's be clear, there's difference between there's coaches and there's coaches, right? There's levels of coaching experience, there's levels of qualification, there's levels of this. So if someone's coming to you as a coach, what are you? What's the thing that people underrate the most?
I think people underestimate the amount that they'll be hiking. So, like I say, train it to gain it. And if you're going to be hiking for 50 Ks of your race, you want to be training for that, like conditioning your body to it, because it's a different motion. So hiking, I think, is often underestimated, and people will go, oh, like even now, like the top guys and girls will be doing a fair bit of hiking, and they're like, why are you sending me out for a hike? Can I just run it? And I'm like, no, no, you're going for a hike, mate. And so that, and I think probably also that kind of rhythm running, like conditioning your body to run long rhythm runs, because we love going for a jaunt around on the trails, and we'll hike up some hills and run down some downhills and run the flats and stuff. But there's quite a lot of good flat running in Tarawera, especially. So I think kind of forgetting to include road running or good long rhythm runs into their training is probably another one. So isn't that funny? I've got both that are kind of polar opposites. One's like do more running, one's saying do more walking.
What about you, Kerry?
Ali stole them. No, kilometers are king. I really do like. If you want to run better, start by running more. And if you can't run anymore, try and run a little bit more, more volume. I always like starting with training frequency, then training distance, and then training intensity. And looking at it that way, I think a lot of athletes, when they are feeling as though their training load is a bit high, they will back out of the training load. And that seems like a natural response, but I like athletes to initially look at increasing their resting, because I think that you can recover from your training if you can increase your resting, and if that doesn't work, then reduce your training load. So probably that would be my other tip too: is take on as much as you can, physically, and mentally with the time that you have available to throw at the sport, and then if that's too much, then look at increasing your sleep time. That would be my one.
Can I have one more? Strength work, especially for a 100-miler, and especially if the weather's crappy. Like 2018, we saw a really wet year, and the people that got through it generally were more robust, like they'd been doing their strength training. So I always encourage people that are doing really long events to get into it, and kind of both ways, like Pilates, something like that, kind of work on those finer kind of areas, and then also kind of the bigger strength muscle groups as well. So kind of covering your bases so that you've got that proprioception if the ground's uneven or mucky. So I wouldn't skimp on that when you think, like you probably taking a couple of 100,000 steps And on uneven terrain, you want everything to be working for you.
As somebody who DNF'd in 2018 and woke up the next morning with incredibly sore shoulders from falling over, grabbing stuff as I was slipping and things, it's like I hear you, Ali, and my shoulders were sore just thinking about it.
Oh, huge.
Can I just throw in... Yeah, anyway, that was a long story. But one other thing that I reckon people underestimate is the mundane shit, by which I mean, like one of the mistakes I made in Tarawera 100 miler was not getting my headlamp out on time. And then I was scrambling around in the dark trying to get my headlamp out. It's just those little things that you can so easily overlook and not, if you're not thinking about it in your training. So if you haven't done a run through the night where maybe you start when it's, slightly lighter and then you move into the darkness, you don't know what that's like. You haven't got your head around thinking, oh, okay, so I need to have my headlamp out before it's actually dark. And, when I'm in the bush, it's darker than when I'm on a gravel road. So I thought it was light still at 8 o'clock, but it's not when I'm in the bush or whatever it is. So, yeah, I guess some of those more mundane things, and that's where, if you haven't done this sort of thing before, listening to people like Kerry and Ali and, or whoever's coaching you or those other experienced people around you.
Yeah, Ali wrote a really good Mile of Warriner Fitness document that goes through a whole bunch of the skill set and experience type stuff that we recommend athletes. Have a precursory glance over and sort of go, before I test the depth of this puddle with 2 feet, a brave night on the internet with a glass of wine and my credit card, I'm going to just quickly check through the list here and see whether it looks like I'm really ready to do this thing. And we don't. It's a welcoming sport. It's an achievable thing. It's certainly a doable thing. But you want to do it well, right? So set yourself up for success, right?
I think one of the two things, Eugene, that is something that sticks with me all the time. That lesson around, and you just talked about how much that kind of did impact that section of the race for you. That's something I ran on Friday night. And I'm so anal about, like, I check my headlamp. If it's got a battery, I check the battery. I check the thing. I make sure I know it sounds so silly, right? But it's a real checklist that I go through all the time. What am I looking at? What am I thinking? If it's going into my bag, how I pack it, where I pack it, is it a chance to get jammed on? And then having it turned on, like running into the night. It's so different, isn't it? People think I'm either going to run into the day and it'll be dark and it'll get light, or I run into the night and it'll be light and it'll get dark. They're two different things, like that. Just your vision, the gloaming, it's so disorientating. It's just, it's hectic ass.
And just used to being, what it feels like to be tired and running, and to be at 3 a.m. and to be I just want to sleep. I always felt with these really long distance, the milers and various other really long distance silly things I did, it was never the distance or the I just wanted to sleep more than anything. I just so badly wanted to, when it ended, I'm just like, I could stay standing up if you would need me to, but I just want to go over, lie down, and I'm tired. So I think probably you can't train against that. Unfortunately, it's like training against being dehydrated. You can only condition yourself for the sensation. You can't fortify yourself against it. So I guess really just be used to it, because you probably can't have a shit your pants amount of caffeine to get through it. It's not going to be, we do not recommend. So an amount of caffeine, but not the too much caffeine. So just, I think, if you are going
training.
Yeah, that's not, well, you can put it in the program if you want.
Shit my pants run. Wow.
Yeah.
Moving on from shitting your pants. I think kind of to just summarize a bit what you guys are saying is that it's really good to not be fixed with your time of day that you train. So kind of play around with running at different times of day, with full tummy, empty tummy, all that sort of stuff, experience that. But when it comes to packing, like Matt's just said, go for the same thing. Like, be fixed about it. Have your routine, know where stuff is, know that it's ready to go. I don't know, for me, I always go like electrolytes on my left, water on my right, and I have my thermal and jacket in the same spot in my pack, and I have my, first aid kit there, and I have my headlamp there, and so it's second nature. You know exactly where stuff is in your pack, and when it is getting dark, it's like boom, got it, because that's where I always get it from. So having that, non-fixedness when it comes to time of day for training, but fixedness when it comes to your gear is quite a good way to go.
What would you say is the most, play this game, under, over, what's the most overrated thing that athletes come to you with, or you think in terms of the what's Gucci in terms of ultra distance? What's the most overrated thing?
Shoes, man. People really piss ass around with shoes. Just put something on your feet and go for a feckin' run. I don't care what the thing. It's just this one's got the carbon plate. This one's got the rock plate. This one's got the wider toe box with the. I see so many lengthy discussions about shoes, and I love people want to nerd out about stuff, but they're all pretty much the same. Just put them on your feet and try not to fall over. I think people also really rely on the mechanical grip of shoes and forget that body placement and movement is the most important thing on a trail. They're always looking for something that's got big aggressive lugs, and when they start to wear down a bit, they chuck their shoes in the bin. But realistically, you can pretty much run most of the trails in Australasia in a pair of Nike road shoes. Just try not stand in the mud puddle. Try not slide into it 2 feet forwards. If you position yourself smartly on the trails, you can move through most things unless it's a complete quagmire. So again, the shades of was it one of the Western Okataina flashback from Tarawera again every time we talk about an absolute quagmire. I think shoes, for me, are the thing that I think is most, that people fuss about it, most overrated.
Most overrated is all the little things like, should I take this supplement? Should I, they overthink all these stupid little things when actually just get your bang for buck and do some good training. Like, don't worry about, X, Y, Z, just focus on getting some good training done, good recovery, good sleep, get your mindset right. It's a sign, right, that you're passionate and excited about our sport and that you're wanting to improve. But the big improvements are to be found in the big areas. So that's the most overrated thing for me when people get in touch and they're like, and I'm just like, I don't even want to know about it. Like, just go for a run.
I want the black currant. I need the black currant. Start preload, post exercise, protein shake, keto. I've done all the.
Actually, interestingly, we listened to Erin Colbatch, who's a sports dietitian, and she was giving a talk about supplements. And holy moly, what was it? 2017 UTMB? There were a large number of athletes who had basically taken stuff that was contaminated. So you know what, like, actually, even as a middle or back of pack athlete, if you get caught, you can serve a ban. Yep. So we actually do need to take a bit more notice about what we're putting in our bodies, because I wouldn't want to be banned from the sport that I love because I've had a protein powder that had something in it, or so I think that's an area that we need to probably pay a little bit more heed to as athletes.
It was interesting. It was a very, very famous, well-known podcast with a very famous, well-known podcast host, and they had Courtney Dauwalter and Alex Holland on, and it was both those things that host gets quite in the weeds with supplements and things like that, and both of their approach, they both sort of shook their head and Alex Holland in particular was like, no, I don't understand what you're talking about. I just drink water, peanut butter, some vegetables. Courtney was the same. Like, I'll have a couple of beers after I finish, but otherwise I'll eat good and run a lot and sleep. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? People seem to want to hack their way through this stuff, but there's a lot, as you said, Eugene, of a gloriously mundane shit to go through.
Yeah, I think don't get caught up chasing the pennies on the floor when there's $20 on the table, particularly when it comes to your training and the main things. So just focus on the key stuff, really.
Right. What a way to finish. There's a lot to digest, and there's certainly, for those that are playing along at home, there's a lot to digest. There's a lot to digest myself 8 months out from this endeavor. One of the amazing things is that we're going to be doing is we're going to be catching up regularly with Ali and Kerry, aren't we, Eugene? And going through more kind of in-depth coaching topics, tidbits, anything like that. So if you've got a question that you'd like Kerry or Ali to ask, or a topic, get in touch, let us know. But for now, we will bid you a fond farewell at the aid station. We'd like to thank you very much for tuning in, and the aid station crew for supporting us in this endeavor. We love it so much, and stay tuned next week for our quote-unquote regular DCR when we've got another great guest lined up.
Hei kona. Hei kona.
Thanks, guys.
Ciao.
Thanks, Rick.